I was studying a business, right? I went to be a businessman like my dad. And the Lord spoke to me.
Rumors are swirling about Mark Lowry, and fans everywhere are deeply concerned. What started as quiet whispers has turned into serious speculation about major troubles facing one of gospel music's most beloved figures. Could there be hidden financial issues, personal struggles, or even legal trouble behind Mark's sudden disappearance from the spotlight? People close to him seem tight-lipped and worried, making fans wonder what's truly going on. Has something shocking happened to Mark Lowry, or is it all just gossip? Stay tuned as we uncover what really happened to Mark Lowry. Rumors about Mark Lowry's health problems. In recent months, rumors began swirling around Mark Lowry, and fans started noticing something was clearly wrong. Mark, known for his humor and vibrant stage presence, seemed different. He began appearing less often at concerts, and when he did, he looked tired and withdrawn. People quickly noticed the change and wondered quietly among themselves, was something serious happening behind the scenes? The gossip intensified when Mark's wife began quietly sharing her concerns with close friends. Although she never made official public statements, small pieces of information started leaking out. Friends said she seemed worried and stressed, hinting privately that Mark was struggling with health issues nobody else knew about. These whispered conversations quickly turned into bigger rumors. Soon, social media was full of questions and theories about what exactly was wrong with Mark Lowry. Some fans guessed it might be a chronic illness that Mark had kept hidden from the public for a long time. Others suggested he was simply exhausted after years of non-stop performing and traveling. A few even believed he might be dealing with deep emotional struggles, depression, or anxiety, things many performers experience privately but rarely share openly. Mark's followers debated these theories passionately, unsure what to believe. The lack of clear information from Mark himself only added to the mystery. Adding fuel to the speculation, Mark canceled several concerts unexpectedly. His fans, who had always counted on seeing him perform, felt worried and confused. Concert organizers offered vague reasons, citing only personal health concerns, or saying Mark needed to rest and recover. These unclear explanations left fans with even more questions than before. Soon, online forums filled with fans discussing their concerns about Mark. Some claimed they'd seen him recently looking very unwell, pale, and noticeably thinner. Others insisted they had information directly from sources close to his family that Mark had been visiting doctors frequently. These bits of information, true or not, kept fans deeply concerned. The uncertainty led many to imagine the worst, fueling anxiety within his community of followers. Despite all these rumors, Mark himself remained quiet, avoiding the public eye as much as possible. Whenever he briefly appeared in public, he avoided answering direct questions about his health, politely changing topics or giving short, reassuring answers without much detail. His wife also kept her statements brief, simply saying he needed rest and prayers. This cautious silence only added to the intrigue and concern surrounding Mark's mysterious health struggles. As speculation continued to grow, fans hoped desperately for clear answers. They worried deeply about Mark's well-being, praying regularly for his recovery. Yet, without direct explanations, rumors continued to build, leaving everyone anxiously wondering what was truly happening to the beloved gospel star. The shocking incident, the car accident. But one night, everything suddenly changed for Mark Lowry. It was a rainy evening, dark clouds filling the sky. Mark had just finished performing at a church event outside of town, one of the few appearances he'd managed to make in recent weeks. Despite feeling tired and not fully healthy, Mark insisted on driving himself home. He felt determined to prove to himself and to everyone else that he could still handle his life independently, without help. He got into his car and started driving down the empty, wet highway, unaware that his life was about to take a dramatic turn. As Mark drove, the rain grew heavier, making it hard to see the road clearly. He turned on his windshield wipers and leaned forward, squinting at the blurry highway ahead. The radio quietly played gospel music, something that usually helped him relax. But tonight, even his favorite songs couldn't fully ease his tension. Mark felt distracted, his thoughts drifting to the rumors about his health, his wife's worries, and the many uncertainties about his future. He kept replaying conversations in his mind, wondering what people were saying behind his back. The pressure felt overwhelming, and he wished he could simply escape from everything, even just for one night. Lost in thought, Mark didn't notice that the rain had created deep puddles on the road. Suddenly, without warning, his tires hit a large pool of water, causing his car to lose control. Mark desperately gripped the steering wheel, trying to regain control as the car slid sideways, its tires slipping on the slick pavement. His heart pounded in panic as he frantically pressed the brakes. But it was too late. The vehicle began spinning uncontrollably, and Mark's whole world became a blur. Everything seemed to move in slow motion as he felt the car sliding toward the roadside barrier. The impact was violent. Mark's car slammed into the metal barrier, crumpling like a tin can. The force of the crash shattered the windshield instantly, glass exploding around him. Mark felt a sharp pain shoot through his body as the airbag deployed, violently pushing him backward against his seat. He was stunned, struggling to breathe, dizzy from shock and pain. Blood dripped slowly down his forehead, mixing with the rainwater pouring through the broken windows. Mark was barely conscious, but he knew instantly that something was terribly wrong. Cars passing by quickly stopped, their headlights illuminating the wreckage. Several people ran toward the crushed vehicle, shouting questions, asking if Mark was okay. He tried to respond, but his voice was weak and faint. Within minutes, sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder as emergency vehicles rushed toward the scene. Paramedics carefully pulled Mark from the twisted metal wreckage, speaking calmly and gently as they assessed his injuries. They quickly realized his condition was serious, loading him onto a stretcher and into the ambulance as fast as possible. At the hospital, doctors immediately began examining Mark, discovering multiple severe injuries. He had several broken ribs, a fractured collarbone, and a badly broken leg. The medical team moved quickly to stabilize him, performing urgent surgery to repair his injuries and stop internal bleeding. Mark spent several hours in surgery, while his family waited anxiously outside the operating room, praying for good news. When the doctors finally spoke with them, they explained clearly that although Mark had survived, his injuries were significant. He would face a long and difficult recovery ahead. The news of Mark's accident spread quickly. Within hours, social media exploded with worried messages and prayers from fans around the world. People shared the news, expressing shock and deep concern for Mark's health and future. Rumors about his previous health struggles quickly resurfaced, with many fans wondering if this terrible accident might have been preventable. Fans questioned why Mark had been driving alone, especially given recent concerns about his health. Conversations online grew emotional, with many people praying publicly and privately for Mark's speedy recovery. Back in the hospital, Mark faced difficult, painful days. Every movement brought intense discomfort. Simple tasks like breathing deeply or shifting in bed felt excruciating. Doctors and nurses worked carefully to manage his pain, but the emotional struggle was even harder than the physical pain. Mark felt deeply discouraged, frustrated by his situation. He worried about how long his recovery would take and whether he'd ever fully heal. The uncertainty was emotionally exhausting, adding extra stress to an already difficult situation. Mark also wrestled with regret. Lying alone in the hospital bed, he replayed the accident in his mind endlessly, questioning his decision to drive himself that night. He wondered why he hadn't accepted the help others had offered, why he'd stubbornly insisted on proving himself. Mark realized that his own pride and stubbornness had contributed to this painful outcome. Accepting this realization was tough, causing feelings of shame and embarrassment. Yet, deep inside, he knew it was an important lesson, one he had learned in the hardest possible way. Mark's wife stayed constantly by his side. She comforted him through the darkest moments, reassuring him he wasn't alone. She spoke encouraging words, prayed with him, and reminded him constantly of the thousands of people supporting and praying for him every day. Her presence provided Mark enormous emotional strength. He realized clearly how deeply he relied on her, not only for physical care, but emotional support. This realization was humbling, making him appreciate even more deeply the love and loyalty of his family. Throughout his hospital stay, Mark received countless messages of support. Fans sent letters, cards, and gifts filled with encouragement and prayers. Churches around the country held special prayer meetings asking for Mark's healing and comfort for his family. Mark felt deeply touched by these gestures. Although he struggled physically, knowing so many people cared about him gave him renewed emotional strength to face his difficult recovery. Eventually, Mark began making slow progress. With intensive physical therapy and constant medical care, he gradually regained strength. Learning to walk again was painful and challenging, but he remained determined. Each small improvement filled him with gratitude and hope. Mark realized clearly how close he'd come to losing everything, giving him a deeper appreciation for life, family, and faith. The accident, though traumatic, ultimately became a turning point for Mark. During his weeks in the hospital, he had plenty of time to reflect on his life. he began seeing things differently, recognizing the importance of slowing down, accepting help, and valuing relationships above career or public image. This shift in perspective began reshaping his worldview dramatically, affecting how he saw himself and the world around him. Though he knew the road ahead would remain challenging, Mark felt determined to move forward. He was unsure whether he'd ever fully return to performing or public speaking, but that uncertainty no longer filled him with fear. Instead, he felt peaceful, trusting that whatever came next was part of a bigger purpose. Mark Lowry, though physically broken, began to find emotional and spiritual strength he never knew existed, preparing himself for whatever the future might bring. His wife's reaction, fan support, and Mark's recovery. When news of Mark Lowry's serious car accident reached his wife, she was immediately devastated. At first, she couldn't believe it was real. She felt numb and terrified, as if her entire world had suddenly crashed along with Mark's car. She rushed to the hospital, her heart pounding, praying silently all the way there, hoping desperately that Mark would be all right. Seeing him in a hospital bed, covered in bandages and barely conscious, broke her heart. She sat quietly next to him, holding his hand, hoping her presence would somehow comfort him. In those first painful hours, she felt overwhelmed by fear and uncertainty, unsure what the future would hold. After the initial shock wore off, Mark's wife quickly realized she had to become strong, not just for herself, but especially for Mark. She began managing everything for him, speaking with doctors, organizing care plans, and reassuring worried family members. She stayed constantly by Mark's side, refusing to leave him alone in the hospital even for short periods. Nurses noticed her dedication and quietly admired her strength. Although she was exhausted emotionally, she hid it well, always trying to appear calm and confident, hoping it would encourage Mark to stay strong during his difficult recovery. Meanwhile, news of Mark's accident spread quickly to his fans. Social media was soon flooded with messages of love and prayers from people around the world. Fans posted heartfelt stories about how Mark's music and humor had helped them through difficult times, expressing how deeply they hoped for his recovery. Churches organized special prayer gatherings, and online groups shared daily updates about Mark's condition, offering constant support and encouragement to each other. Mark's followers even created online groups dedicated entirely to praying for his healing and supporting his family emotionally. This huge wave of compassion helped Mark's wife stay strong, knowing so many people genuinely cared about him. As Mark slowly regained consciousness and began to understand what had happened, the support from fans deeply touched him. Although he was physically hurting and emotionally drained, hearing about the thousands of people praying for him gave Mark a sense of hope and purpose. Every message, every card, and every story his wife read aloud helped him feel less alone. It reminded him why he'd chosen a public career in the first place, because he genuinely loved making people happy and inspiring them. Seeing how much he meant to others motivated Mark to face the difficult challenges of rehabilitation. But recovery wasn't easy. Mark faced serious physical pain every single day. His broken ribs and fractured leg made even simple tasks feel impossible. Getting out of bed, standing, and eventually learning to walk again required incredible patience and determination. The rehabilitation process was slow, frustrating, and exhausting. Many days, Mark felt discouraged, sometimes even hopeless. But during these toughest moments, his wife became his greatest strength. She stayed by his side constantly, gently encouraging him to keep pushing forward, reminding him of how many people believed in his ability to recover completely. Her constant presence became crucial to Mark's emotional and physical healing. She patiently attended all of Mark's therapy sessions, always cheering him on and celebrating every small victory, like when he took his first shaky steps after weeks of painful attempts. When Mark felt angry or frustrated by the slow progress, she patiently listened, comforting him and reminding him of how far he'd already come. Her unwavering support helped Mark feel safe and motivated. He began seeing her as not just his wife, but his strongest ally, someone whose love and support were genuinely saving him. Throughout this long recovery period, Mark also reflected deeply on his own life. The accident had forced him to slow down and truly think about what mattered most. Mark realized that before the accident, he'd been too focused on proving himself, constantly performing, always trying to appear strong, independent, and successful. The accident showed him how fragile life really was. Mark began to see clearly what truly mattered to him: his family, his marriage, faith, and the genuine connections he had with fans. He started to think deeply about whether the way he'd been living before the accident was truly fulfilling, or if he'd been missing something important along the way. Fans noticed Mark's changing attitude as he started sharing short messages online about his recovery journey. In videos posted online, Mark openly talked about his struggles and emotional growth during recovery. Fans responded with even greater support, deeply moved by his honesty and vulnerability. They appreciated seeing Mark not as a perfect figure, but as a real human being who faced real struggles. Mark's openness encouraged fans facing their own hardships, creating deeper connections than ever before. Through all of this, his wife's role remained absolutely critical. She not only helped him physically recover, but also became his emotional rock, reminding him daily of his value beyond the stage. Friends close to the couple noticed that Mark's relationship with his wife seemed stronger than ever, deeply enriched by the difficult experience they shared. Many commented privately that the couple had developed a new, stronger bond because of the accident. Mark himself openly credited his wife for his emotional healing, publicly sharing how her love, support, and patience had completely changed how he viewed their relationship. As Mark continued to recover, speculation about his future grew. Fans wondered openly whether Mark would ever return fully to performing and public ministry. Some guessed Mark might decide to step away permanently from the demanding schedule that had worn him down. They thought perhaps he'd prefer a quieter life, focusing on writing or small personal engagements rather than big public events. Others believed the opposite, that Mark would return to the stage, stronger and more inspiring than ever, using his difficult experiences as powerful lessons for others. Mark himself was unsure exactly what would happen next, but one thing felt clear to him now: his future would be different. The accident, as painful as it was, had taught Mark valuable lessons about humility, patience, and genuine strength. He knew deeply now that strength wasn't about always appearing perfect. It was about facing hardships honestly, accepting help, and allowing others to see his vulnerability. He understood clearly now that this honesty was powerful, capable of changing lives in ways he'd never fully appreciated before. Together with his wife, Mark began planning a new direction. They discussed creating a ministry focused on supporting people who faced trauma or serious life challenges. Mark imagined using his own experiences openly, helping others heal emotionally and spiritually. This idea excited him deeply, giving him a clear sense of purpose beyond traditional performing. His wife encouraged this vision passionately, helping Mark see that his life's most powerful chapters might still lie ahead. Ultimately, Mark's difficult journey taught him invaluable lessons about life, love, and faith. He learned firsthand that painful experiences could lead to unexpected opportunities for growth and deeper connections. Though his body remained fragile, his heart felt stronger than ever. Mark knew the accident had changed him permanently, but in ways that might actually make him better, stronger, and even more inspiring to the many people who followed his journey. His wife's crucial role in his recovery. From the moment Mark Lowry was rushed to the hospital after the accident, his wife became his anchor. She had always been his greatest supporter, but this situation pushed her into a new role: his caretaker, his emotional rock, and the one person who refused to let him give up. While Mark lay in a hospital bed, struggling with immense pain and uncertainty, his wife took control, making sure he had everything he needed, both physically and emotionally. She barely left his side, sitting with him through long nights when the pain kept him awake, holding his hand when fear and frustration threatened to overwhelm him. In the first few days after the accident, Mark was barely able to process what had happened. The medication, the exhaustion, and the trauma of the crash had left him feeling distant and detached. But every time he opened his eyes, his wife was there. She spoke to doctors, made sure he was comfortable, and reassured him with a quiet strength that he desperately needed. She handled the overwhelming flood of calls, messages, and media attention, shielding him from anything that could cause more stress. When he felt too weak to speak or respond, she became his voice, updating friends, family, and fans, letting them know he was fighting and would pull through. Mark's recovery process was long and painful. His injuries made even the simplest movements agonizing. The broken ribs made breathing difficult, and his fractured leg made it impossible for him to stand or walk. Each day felt like a battle, and there were times when he wanted to give up, convinced that he would never fully heal. But his wife refused to let him sink into despair. She reminded him constantly that healing was possible, that every small step forward mattered, and that he was never alone in this journey. She sat with him through hours of physical therapy, watching as he struggled to regain control over his body. At times, Mark grew frustrated, feeling helpless and weak. He hated being dependent on others. He hated feeling stuck in a bed when he was used to being active and full of energy. But his wife had an unwavering patience, meeting his frustration with encouragement and kindness. When Mark complained that he wasn't making enough progress, she reminded him of how far he had already come. When he doubted himself, she reminded him of his own strength. Her role in his recovery wasn't just about managing his physical healing, it was about helping him regain his confidence and willpower. Mark had always been known for his humor and joy, but after the accident, he struggled to feel like himself. His wife knew that his emotional state was just as important as his physical recovery, so she found ways to bring back the laughter and lightheartedness that made Mark who he was. She played him his favorite music, brought in close friends to lift his spirits, and filled the hospital room with positivity. Even on his worst days, she found a way to make him smile, reminding him that life was still full of joy, even in the hardest moments. As time passed, Mark's wife continued to play a crucial role in his progress. When he was finally able to leave the hospital, she became his full-time caregiver at home, ensuring he followed his recovery plan and didn't push himself too hard. She learned every detail of his medication schedule, helped him with mobility exercises, and carefully managed his diet to keep him strong. But more than anything, she gave him the emotional strength to keep going. She reminded him that he was not just recovering for himself, but for the people who loved him, for the fans who were praying for him, and for the life they had built together.